The integration for Warzone, this is the worst I've ever seen Call of Duty.
But I can't play it. I can't enjoy it. There's no integrity. Somebody's cheating, or the network sucks, or the game is broken.
I don't think Call of Duty has ever been in a worse spot than it is right now. It's kind of depressing.
I'm basically going to be taking a pretty decent break from Warzone, probably the longest one I've ever taken before.
Call of Duty is dead, apparently. But what if I told you that Call of Duty wasn't dead, but it's just incredibly stale right now? Let's get into it. So the first thing that I want to touch on, what a lot of people are using to say that this game is dead, is the Steam charts. Now, Call of Duty is obviously played over a wide variety of different platforms. On PC, we have Steam and we have Battle.net. Then obviously there's console in terms of Xbox and PlayStation. However, the only sort of figures and playing statistics that we can see of Call of Duty is through Steam. Now, it is worth pointing out that most players, I would imagine, on PC will play through Battle.net, not Steam. So this is only a very small sample of the Call of Duty player base. However, the trends that we can see on Steam, it's probably fair to say that those trends will definitely transfer over to other platforms such as Battle.net and then obviously the PlayStation and the Xbox. So if we look into how Call of Duty has performed on Steam over the last few months. So in November 2024, right here, Call of Duty seen an increase of 81,432 players. That is because Black Ops 6 dropped, and Black Ops 6 was very, very well received and very, very well reviewed. For me personally, it's one of the most polished Call of Duties that we've had in recent years. However, in December and then over the last 30 days into January, Call of Duty has seen a very, very, very steep decline in terms of its player base. So back to November 2024, it had a peak players of 313,000. Down in the last 30 days, it's had a peak players of 118,000. That is a very steep drop off, and that's purely because Warzone dropped in the buggy mess that we all know it was. However, this is not just a trend for this year. If you go all the way back to November 2023, you've seen an increase in players because Modern Warfare 3 dropped. Now, this game wasn't really received as well as Black Ops 6, however, it's still seen an increase in players. However, then in January, February and March, it dropped off once again because the game was stale. Urzikstan is not a great map. Not because Call of Duty is dying, it's just very, very creatively stale. Also, you can go back to November 2022 and see the same trend again. So 120,000 players played Call of Duty on Steam. This is worth bearing in mind that this number is the first time that Call of Duty was added to Steam when Modern Warfare 2 dropped. However, it then saw a massive steep decline all the way throughout December, January, February, March, April and May before it actually even gained some players back in June. That's because Modern Warfare 2 was just such a horrendous game, really. So looking at all of this, is the game dead? Well, not really, because 118,000 players on Steam alone suggests that the game isn't dead. It just is incredibly stale. And when I'm talking about staleness, I'm not talking about Call of Duty in general. Black Ops 6 is absolutely thriving, to be fair. This is the Season 2 roadmap for Black Ops 6 coming out on Tuesday coming. Black Ops 6 multiplayer, we're getting loads of new maps, we're getting loads of different modes, we're getting new perks, we're getting new wildcards, we're getting different sort of rank camos, we're getting a lot of things for multiplayer. We're also getting a brand new zombies map. There's going to be the 4th zombies map for Black Ops 6, and we're only in January. Let that sink in. Zombies is getting a load of content this year, and I'm really, really all for it, to be honest. Then we're getting some new weapons added into the game. We're getting the PPSH, which is one of the most iconic Call of Duty weapons ever. We're getting the TR2, which is essentially just the FAL added back in again. An iconic gun from Call of Duty gone by. We're getting loads of new content for Black Ops. However, Warzone is the stale part. Now, there obviously was going to be content for Warzone Season 2. That has all been postponed because of how bad the game is. So, all we're getting for Warzone, bear in mind, this is Call of Duty's biggest free IP they've ever had. It's probably one of the biggest IPs they've ever had, to be fair, in terms of Call of Duty. Look at that roadmap, and then Warzone is just in the box at the top there. That's just unheard of. You would never would have thought that even a year ago, never mind now, that you've got all this content coming to the game and Warzone is tucked away in the top right-hand corner. However, we're getting changes to weapons, movement, default perks, and more. Basically, they're going to repair the full game. We are getting a new perk. We're getting a reactive armor perk, and we're also getting a low profile perk. The low profile perk, if you're crouching, basically you can move a little bit quicker and quieter while crouching. Not that it matters because there's no audio in the game anyway. And reactive armor perk, I'm sure you get automatic armor put back on if you go below a certain level. I'm pretty sure that's how that works. And we're getting new rank rewards as well. If anyone wants to be a ranked player in the state of the game that it's in, you're braver than me. I got a platinum this season and that was all good. However, we're getting new events as well. We're also getting the Terminator and Shadowhunt. I imagine they'll be in Warzone somewhat, so there will be a little bit of content for Warzone. However, no content for Warzone this season, purely because the game's that broken and they're going to fix it. And getting onto that, that's why the game is going to continue to be stale, but there's a reason for this. So, Season 2 of Warzone is essentially the breakdown of this, a focus on gameplay tuning, quality of life improvements, and addressing ongoing bugs. As announced in a recent Call of Duty updates blog, we've made the decision to prioritise focus on gameplay tuning, adding more quality of life improvements, and addressing ongoing bugs. This means that in order to deliver meaningful improvements to our players, new content originally planned for Season 2 has been shifted to create bandwidth to address functional issues. Now, this is a great thing. Now, I've said that Call of Duty isn't dead, it's stale, and it is, because right now we have Urzikstan back when it dropped in the Modern Warfare 3 era. The map was boring then, it's boring now. That's one thing that makes it stale. Number two, the only resurgence map aside from Rebirth Island, which I'll touch on in a second, is Area 99. Again, it's a bit of a mess because it's dropped in an absolutely broken war zone. Not really the best of maps. Probably, aside from Ashika Island, I would say one of the worst Warzone maps. It's not great, it's not fantastic, but it's not bad and it's not good either. It's just meh, basically. There's no community sentiment towards Area 99, so that is an issue. Then talking about Rebirth Island, that's the other alternative right now, the other resurgence alternative. We've had this map in the game since 2021. It's now 2025. Yes, Rebirth Island is loved. We know the community love it. It's probably one of our favourite maps as a Call of Duty community. However, it's dull. It's so dull. It's so stale. We've played it without very little change now for the last almost 4 years. Like, come on. Like, just invent and create and innovate. That's what makes Call of Duty stale. Not dead, stale. Because there is still a strong fan base for Rebirth Island. Of course there is. But it's stale and it needs a bit of excitement into it. For me personally, if you weren't going to drop content into Season 2, at least drop old content that we've already had. Maybe bring back like totally like Awesome Rebirth or whatever it was called, or like Iron Trials into Rebirth, something like that. Just give us something a bit different to play, limited time modes that are fun and add a little bit of a twist on the game, rather than just Rebirth Island quads that we've had for 4 years almost. So then we're talking about these functions here. It says, these improvements won't all come at once, rather they'll be staggered across the season with quite a few quality of life changes coming mid-season. And it says, our priority is having the most solid foundation that Battle Royale can offer and excited for players. And they're excited for the players to see it all live. Basically, the priority is that Verdansk is dropping in Season 3. They're going to bank on a massive amount of nostalgia to bring a huge chunk of players back to the game. And if that game's broken, how it is now, then well, the game will be dead, not stale. So it says, rest assured, a full selection of content is still accessible with access to maps, Area 99, Urzikstan, and Rebirth Island. And the modes, Battle Royale, Resurgence, Plunder, is all going to still be available. And Battle Royale Ranked is going to come as well with the launch of Season 2, so that'll all reset. Call of Duty Warzone players will also be part of the Terminator and Shadowhunt events during the first few weeks of the season. And access to all the shared Season 2 content, including the new base weapons. So we are getting some things this season, but for the most part, we're not getting an awful lot. I mean, we are going to get a meta change, which is much needed. We're going to get new guns, we're going to get new events, so hopefully there will be a little bit of things to get involved in there. However, for me, this is what Call of Duty needs to do. One, it's just an absolute product of destruction of its own cycle. It just reinvents the wheel every year. Warzone needs to be a standalone thing. I think I've said that previously with how bad the game is. I think Warzone needs to be taken out of Call of Duty's yearly cycle and just, it's its own player base, it's its own thing. If you look at the likes of PUBG, Fortnite, Apex, those games do update themselves. However, they're still very much true to the original product that dropped years and years ago. Warzone is night and day different from what it was when it dropped 5 years ago. Another thing it needs to do is that since Call of Duty transformed into this live service game where it drops free content sort of like every 8 weeks with a big season update, and obviously I suppose every 4 weeks for sort of these mid-season updates, you need to start having a development team that's available all year round. So at the moment, Activision's development teams sort of launch a Call of Duty in the October-November, and they'll then launch a Warzone integration early December, and then they'll all go off for a holiday break. And then they'll come back in January. The game is 9 out of 10 in an absolute sorry state of itself, and the community are really fed up with it. I think if you're going to have this style of game, you're going to need a skeleton development crew that's going to work throughout the holiday period. Again, it's a bit, man, no one really wants to work over Christmas, but if you're going to have this kind of game, that's what's going to need to be implemented. Because we're seeing this situation now where Season 1 dropped at the end of November for Call of Duty Black Ops 6. We then had the mid-season update early December. It's now end of January. We've had no fresh content since early December now, give or take, apart from Squid Games. And then we've now had a meta that's lasted an awfully long time in terms of the XM4 and the Jackal. And again, these kind of get boring. Things like this need to change. It's kind of giving me flashbacks to the RPK meta of Warzone 2, and we all know how bad that was. And also, Call of Duty needs to innovate again. It needs to stop relying on the past. Now, don't get me wrong, bringing back PPSH, I'm very excited for. It's one of my favourite guns ever in Call of Duty history. However, we've had it in so many Call of Duties now that it's a bit boring. For me personally, I'd rather see like an AirMax come back, give us stuff like that, rather than guns that we've had recently, but not that we've had all the way throughout Call of Duty's 20-year life cycle. So, again, not dead, but still. And for me personally, it feels like Call of Duty is just very much creatively bankrupt, and it's trying to pander to a nostalgia element that doesn't exist anymore. Like, the player base that played Call of Duty 4 and grew up in the golden age of Call of Duty, like, yeah, okay, like, we reflect on those games as, those were like the golden age of Call of Duty, and there's a lot of nostalgia there, but we all know that the modern day Call of Duty cannot live up to that nostalgia, so it needs to stop trying to do that, and it needs to be better and innovate a lot more. It's fair to say that Season 2 of Black Ops 6 and sort of Warzone is going to be the biggest season that Call of Duty's ever had in terms of it's got to get it right. Warzone has to be updated. Warzone has to be working by the end of this season, because if a dance drops in March or April, whenever it's going to drop, and it's broken and the game doesn't work, well then I will definitely say that Call of Duty isn't still. It'll be officially dead. And yeah, I think even me personally will probably look to play other games. Let me know what you think about the current state of Call of Duty. Let me know what you think about where we're going in Season 2. Do you think the game will be fixed? Do you think that we'll sort this out? Or do you think that it's just going to be the same old, same old? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.